on the role of forensic DNA in fighting crime and expediting justice, organized by the Gujarat Forensic Sciences University and Ogilvy. I'm Siddharth Pandey, and over the next hour and a half, I'll be joined by leading experts in the field of forensics, crime, and law as we discuss the use of DNA in tackling crime, with a special focus on sexual offenses and rape. Now, one reason why this webinar is taking place on the web is, of course, because of the lockdown. But it's also taking place precisely because of the lockdown and the anticipated increase in crime as we unlock and relax restrictions on public movement, leading to a spike in sexual violence, making it all the more important to further arm and strengthen the system with a robust forensic DNA infrastructure. In fact, in the past 2 months alone, reports indicate that after an initial dip, violence against women has steadily increased during the lockdown period. The National Commission for Women has received more than 1,000 domestic violence complaints between the 25th of March and the 22nd of April. And there has also been a significant increase in cybercrime against women, especially sextortion. So why DNA? Well, DNA forensics is, as many of you already know, the world's greatest crime fighting tool. It can help nail the guilty and even acquit the innocent. But if that's the case, why aren't we using it a lot more in India? Well, that's another question for our expert panel today, but that's just in a bit. Well, to help frame the debate and put it in perspective, we are fortunate to have with us India's senior most working forensic scientist, Dr. J.M. Vyas. Dr. Vyas has more than 46 years of work experience and is the founder, Director General of the Gujarat Forensic Sciences University, the world's first and only forensic science university. A recipient of the President's Police Medal, Dr. Vyas has numerous national and international awards to his name. He is also on a number of international and national expert committees and has been a special invitee by Parliament's Standing Committee for his opinion on the crucial DNA bill. I'd like to now request Dr. Vyas to share his keynote address with us and help frame the discussion. Over to you, Dr. Vyas.
Thank you, Siddharth, for a nice introduction. I welcome all the participants who are from different parts of the world. I could see the list of the participants. There are judges, there are advocates, there are police officers, there are forensic experts, there are faculties who are working in various institutions teaching forensic science in different countries in different parts of the world. And there are students, large number of students have registered, and they are from all over. So a good audience, and this audience, we can appreciate the role of forensics and role of DNA, particularly in the investigation of crime. Within 10 minutes, I will cover most of the aspects, so I'll be a little faster. But to start with, what is DNA? And before jumping into DNA, we should understand what is investigation. Investigation of a crime. So investigation is basically identification of a person, identification of a perpetrator of crime. That is what you investigate. Any crime committed by a person, you need to identify them. Now, before DNA was invented or it came into practice, in India, I think we started applying DNA from 1999 onwards. And then today also there are few forensic laboratories in the countries who have got these facilities and who are reporting cases based on DNA fingerprint. Now, but before that, see, when you get a body fluid, for example, blood from a scene of offense, now based on which you need to identify a person. Now, the limitation was you had option of going for a blood grouping. So, you go for AB, and O. And we were working on a theory of inclusion-exclusion. Now, if suppose you are getting a blood from a crime scene which is of a B group, and the person you are identifying could be a suspect, could be involved in a crime, is also of a B group, then you can say that he is included, means that is inclusive. He is not ruled out. He is not excluded from this. But if suppose that person is of A group and you are looking for a person of a B group from a crime scene blood, that was an exclusion, and that exclusion used to be 100%. Legally, if you see, exclusion is 100%, but inclusion is never 100%. So then 100% you can say that because the blood you got from a crime scene is of B and the person you identified was having A group, that person is ruled out, is excluded. Now, if you come to inclusion part, inclusion, if that is B and mine is also B, you can't arrest me and hang me because I possess the same group. That was a problem. There are lakhs of people containing same B group. Now, then the science went further. Then we came with isoenzyme analysis, that is a further subgrouping. Then you do PGM, you do HLA, etc. There also you try to narrow down the possibilities. Again, if suppose there is an inclusion, you can say this person is not eliminated, he could be there. But if suppose PGM, HLA, etc., you get a different pattern, then you can say yes, this person is excluded, and that exclusion again is 100%. But inclusion was never 100%. So there were methods where you were going for grouping, you were used to go for subgrouping, and after applying all kinds of techniques, ultimately you were able to give an opinion that yes, the person could be there, if the person is not eliminated. That's all. That was the scenario in forensic science. But DNA made a revolution. Now it is not inclusion exclusion. Now you are identifying a person because it was established like, see, earlier if identification was to be made, there was only one sample which was available with most of the people in the world, and that was our fingerprint. That was an established principle that no two individuals have got same fingerprints. But then getting fingerprint from a crime scene was also difficult. Now criminals have become more smart. They will ensure and see that they don't leave any traces of fingerprints, so they are not identifiable. So getting fingerprints from a crime scene became a big problem. So then this scenario of investigation was coming limited all the time. And you were going to some extent where you were saying that this person is not excluded from this. He could be a perpetrator. But then it was not possible for you to say that 100% he is the person who has done the crime. That was a limitation. Then the DNA came. And then it was through research, it came out that no two individuals have got same DNA with few conditions. So then that made a revolution. Now you need not depend on fingerprint. Now body fluids, any part of my body contains my DNA. And not only that, even my belongings contain my DNA, like my specs, my wristwatch, my toothbrush, the items we are using and I am in contact with on day-to-day basis, they also contain my DNA. My perspiration contains my DNA. My hairs have got DNA. My tooth has got DNA. My blood, semen, bones, skin. These are the parts from which you can get DNA. So I now did not depend on fingerprint. Even if traces of hair, tooth, bone, blood, semen, etc. is available from the scene of offense. Now you do the DNA profiling. Now you are able to identify the person, that he is the person who has committed the crime. And at the same time, you can say that you can also exonerate that he is a person who is not involved in the crime. So innocent people wrongly inflicted in a crime, it was a good blessings for them that yes, now they can be excluded if they are not part of this crime. So this made really a revolution. And then every country slowly started applying DNA technology. The problem was DNA technology, first thing was expensive. Second thing, it requires high level of expertise. So every forensic lab in the country could not do this because you need high level of expertise, you need good amount of technology, expensive technology also. So some of the FSLs came out with this, started doing this. Now the problem is, here also what you are doing like fingerprint, you do the matching. So you create a profile, DNA profile from a crime scene. They in our DNA bill they have mentioned the index, crime scene index, then disease index, DNA index, then you have missing persons in DNA index likewise. So this can be done. So now you do the profiling, and now this profiling has to be compared with your suspect. Now, how far your method is accurate to see that there is a total comparison? Because if suppose there are some lacunas in your method of analysis of deriving a DNA profile, you may come out with a wrong comparison, may inflict the wrong kind of people. So again, some kind of SOPs were issued that these are the methods through which DNA analysis will be performed. These are the softwares through which the analysis will be done and the profiles will be prepared, and the comparison will also be done using the same software. Initially, there were only two softwares, CODIS, which was introduced by FBI, and then Forensic Science Services UK. They were the first in the world to come out with DNA profiling. They also had their own software. So these were the two softwares available. Now France and other countries have also come out with their own softwares, but these were the two softwares. And so slowly this became now easy. And how this has speed up judicial process. Now judicial process cannot be speeded up through DNA. What you can speed up is investigation process. If suppose I have got a spot of a blood, and now I don't have DNA, so I am going for a grouping, I am going for subgrouping, and then I am trying to say that this person is not excluded, and there could be large number of suspects not excluded. Now then you need to pinpoint as who is person out of this 10-15 suspects who could have done this. In case of rape, sometimes it was possible because if the victim is alive, victim can go and identify the person. But in most of the cases, what we have seen, rape come murder. So the person after raping, the victim is killed. So now there is no witness, there is nobody who knows, and there are large number of suspects. To narrow down the possibilities, you need to go for this. So this is how DNA technology has reduced the time of investigation. Now you are not looking for any other methods of identifying a person, going for other witnesses, recording their statements, etc. Straight away, you have the biological fluid, you have a biological sample, analyze it, and whatever number of suspects you have, 30, 40, 50, take DNA profile of all of them and then compare. And now you know that out of this 30, 40 suspects, these are the 2-3 persons who have done the crime. So it simplifies and it speeds up your process of investigation. And that if that investigation method is faster, it is more accurate. Now with authenticity, you are able to pinpoint a person who has committed this crime. Now it is easy for you to convince judiciary, because now they know your scientific data. Based on this scientific principles of DNA, where it has been proved universally that no two individuals have got same DNA profile. Now you are giving this opinion. Judges are convinced. You produce your scientific data and explain it to the judiciary. They accept your opinion. So that also simplifies their work. There was a speedy investigation because you could pinpoint the perpetrator of the crime within a small period of time based on your DNA analysis. And now the reports are submitted to the courts, and courts are able to appreciate this because it is based on DNA analysis. And then it becomes easy for judiciary, a judge, to give an opinion based on DNA profile. So this is how it has become very useful and important from criminal justice point of view also. This DNA it can have multiple uses, and I just would conclude because I have taken some more time, but conclude by giving one case example how DNA is useful, and without DNA how much handicapped we are. There was a case of a rape cum murder, and the the vaginal swab was taken from victim's vagina, and it was collected and sent to forensic lab for examination. Now, the blood group or the vaginal swab, which was subjected to group test, it came out that it contains AB group. Now, the group of the accused was B. So simply you can say that this victim is ruled out, this accused is ruled out, is not there, because the blood, the group you are getting from vagina of a semen is AB, and this person is of B group. Further investigation was done, and then DNA profile was prepared. The DNA profile was matching. That this DNA profile is exactly matching with the accused. So how this can happen? You have a different blood group and you have a same blood profile. That means either the grouping method is wrong or DNA profiling through which you have done is wrong, erroneous. So this question came before the court. And then ultimately we investigated. The blood group of the victim lady was A. There was some bleeding inside the vagina, so there was a mixing of semen and blood. So blood group A came from victim and B group came from the accused, which formed AB group. This is scientifically possible. And then judiciary was convinced there's nothing wrong. Both the results are perfect. DNA is of this person and blood grouping is coming AB because victim is A and the accused is B. And this is how the court was convinced, and then conviction was made. So this is the importance. Without DNA, you would have totally confused. There's nothing. So this is how DNA has made revolution. Our government of India has already introduced a bill. We are going to come out with an act, DNA Act. There everything has been specified. Total entire procedure of doing DNA collection of sample, keeping a data bank at the regional level, national level, laboratory level, everything has been specified, because this is very, very important methodology. You can't afford to have even slightest mistake in this. No contamination in the sample, nothing. So a slight contamination can also give you misleading results. Therefore, government has taken into consideration all these points, and a very, very extensive, exhaustive DNA bill has been prepared, taking into pictures all these points. Accreditation of the laboratory. Without accreditation, you cannot do DNA analysis, etc. I think in the next parliament session, it may come up for discussion. So this is need of the hour. And if you really want to investigate rape cases in the more accurate and precise manner, you need to go for DNA analysis. That is the only way. Otherwise, based on grouping, you will never be able to identify the accused in this. So, very important technology. I am really thankful to our partners, Ugly, who have come up with this kind of a proposal, and we were very happy. So, as Siddharth said, this is a lockdown time, and then this kind of issues are also coming to the notice of various agencies. So, this was a good topic, and I hope everybody will enjoy. We will have now a discussion where the experts will discuss the collection of samples, because everything has to be in a particular fashion. You can't afford to have collection it has to be perfect. Collection, preservation, sample forwarding of the sample, etc. The total chain of custody has to be maintained. Then only you realize, take out a profile and compare, and then you can say that 100% yes, he is a person who is involved in a crime, and he is a person who is not involved in a crime. So
thank you so much.
Again, we will have a panel discussion where we will take the questions, but this is what I wanted to say about it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Vyas. In fact, as you just said it, that the science does not lie, it's in the DNA, and with your example, as you showed, that even there was contamination, but ultimately science proved exactly why they were different blood groups. And science does not lie, so just follow the science, and that's exactly what you are doing at the university. Thank you so much, Dr. Vyas, for your thoughts and helping us shape our discussion. And as you said, we've got experts, and we're very fortunate to have you as the leading expert who will be part of that panel, and we'll get to that panel discussion just very shortly. Well, like I said, we have a high-powered panel of experts discussing very important issues. The advantage of a webinar is that all of you can also participate and interact in this discussion. Our hashtag is DNA Fight Rape, and you can tweet your questions using that hashtag or interact via Instagram, Facebook, or even post your comments and questions via YouTube. So that's how the entire audience can get in touch with us, interact and participate. And let me just quickly tell you what we're looking at. We have over 2,600 confirmed participants who are taking part right now. We've got over 180 judges. We've got members of faculties, students, lawyers, media friends, and a whole range of other stakeholders who've joined this webinar, and of course they are watching this. So please also participate, and like I said, our hashtag is DNA Fights Rape, and you can use this to either retweet the webinar itself or of course post your questions as well. Well, we all know that DNA does play a crucial role in fighting crime, especially sexual offenses including rape. How can we use it more to expedite justice? Now, I'd like to invite Arnita Vasudev, who's the Vice President for Ogilvy, who's been spearheading this initiative, to briefly share with us literally her journey across India over the past few years to build awareness of just how powerful this crime-fighting tool can be. Arnita.
Hey, thanks, Siddharth. That was so nicely put together. And I would like to thank Dr. Vyas for so simply explaining the whole science of DNA, and it was so comprehensive. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to start by saying that crime largely is something that is on the rise across the world. And we in India specifically right now are talking about the issue of sexual offense and rape, which has become a burning issue. In fact, as per the National Crime Record Bureau, there are almost 4 rapes reported every hour. Now, what that really means is that there is a growing concern over the issue of women's safety and the safety of children in our country. And like it is in India, I'm sure that that is the kind of problem that we are grappling with in many other parts of the world. With that, I would like to go back to 3 years before this, when we started our journey and when we were introduced to the subject of DNA forensics. Undoubtedly, it is world's best crime fighting technology. What we got to understand and learn was the fact that the power of DNA not only helps build conviction, but it also helps exonerate the innocent, and which is what then brought us to the point thinking about the fact that where 60 countries today have adopted the DNA database, which is the National Offender Database that helps you track repeat offense. How is it that we can step up the DNA casework in the absence of a DNA database, which became actually the central part and the question for our entire mission? And keeping the sexual offense and rape at the center of all issues, that's where we started to engage with experts across, the forensics, legal, and judiciary, where and law enforcement, where we got to learn a lot from some of the thought leaders, opinion experts, the problems that we clearly realized. One, which was that it's not about the lack of expertise or the lack of capability that India has a problem with. What really stood out was the fact that there's a huge lacking awareness. Now, when I say awareness, I would like to qualify that by saying that there is a huge awareness gap when it comes to sensitization of the forces on ground, who really need to be equipped with the knowledge and know-how of the protocols which are required in terms of what to collect from a crime scene, how to collect, and such that the yield of the DNA test is accurate. So it's not only important for us to build conviction, but it is important to build quality conviction. And that is what we started working towards. So, our contribution as publicists, Ogilvy in India, as communication experts, in terms of our initiative in advocacy, took upon ourselves the very drive of putting together knowledge sharing sessions, debates, interviews, and even training sessions, which we have facilitated, and just like what we are doing today, which is this large platform. And I'm so happy that we have such huge participation, not only from India but outside India also, because of the very fact that we need to simplify those protocols. The fact is that the Ministry of Home Affairs has very well published the guidelines, but what remains to be a challenge is that whether those guidelines are translating into enough knowledge and sensitization with our first line responders, whether or not they are able to access it, whether they are being trained enough. And that's where the problem, and also I would call it our objective, which is to conduct more of these sessions. We've seen some, great outcomes of these efforts in the last 3 years, of all the sessions that and discussions that we are having today. In the recent times, we have, seen the reporting from courts demanding more DNA evidence in the case of sexual offense and rape of minors. We've seen that demand for DNA evidence going up to build conviction. We are also noticeably seeing how, like Dr. Vyas just, also talked about the DNA bill in the parliament. And we are just looking forward to that day sometime soon when it should come through. For the first time, it came to the parliament in session in 2018. And that was the time when the, movement started getting amplified. With those visible outcomes, I would just like to share a brief short video which will just, kind of put together the journey and also explain why it is so important to step up and amplify awareness across the ecosystem that functions around criminal investigation. So let's take you through this video on where's the DNA.
There is renewed outrage in India over a series of brutal rapes. The outrage was prompted by two cases in particular, one involving an 8-year-old girl and the other a 16-year-old.
India has a crime problem growing out of control. A string of brutal rapes has shocked the country and the world. In most cases, the victim knows the perpetrator. Few are convicted. Why? Because the world's best weapon against crime, the use of DNA evidence, is virtually unknown in India. So we asked the question, where's the DNA? A circle of influence and mobilized public demand for the collection of DNA evidence. Targeting some of the most high-profile legal, law enforcement, media, and victims' advocates gatherings across the country, we made our case to leading influencers who came to understand the revolutionary, untapped role of DNA testing and in turn led an organic media drive for its inclusion in police casework. Spurring Parliament to finally consider legislation establishing a national DNA databank, leading police in states across India to make DNA collection a regular part of investigations of rape and violent assault. All because of a simple question: where's the DNA?
Well, in fact, that video capturing some of the work that's gone in over the years to try and build awareness about the importance of DNA in fighting crime. Well, someone else who's been fighting crime and has been successfully using DNA and even teaching others on its importance of preserving DNA is Dr. Sehajpal, a PhD in forensic science with over 26 years of research and analytical experience. Dr. Sehajpal is presently leading the DNA Forensics Division in Himachal Pradesh and has worked on over 1,300 criminal cases. He's trained teams of investigators from both the Himachal and Delhi police departments, along with medical examiners from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in DNA collection, handling, and testing the standard operating procedures. Let's take a look at just how important it is to save the evidence in this short video.
किसी ने देखा नहीं, किसी ने चीख नहीं सुनी, यही सोचकर तो एक रेपिस्ट खुले में घूमता है। इतना घिनौना काम करने के बावजूद उसे कानून का डर ही नहीं होता। कौन रिपोर्ट करेगा? उसके खिलाफ क्या सबूत मिलेगा? लेकिन सबूत हमेशा मिलता है। इनफैक्ट वो खुद उसे छोड़ के जाता है। उसका अपना डीएनए यानी आपकी बॉडी की वो यूनिक पहचान जो आपकी बॉडी के हर सेल में मिलती है। आपके खून में, स्किन में, बॉडी फ्लूइड्स में, नाखून में, थूक में, बाल के एक एक स्ट्रैंड में। अगर आप कहीं भी होते हैं, उठते बैठते हैं या किसी चीज को छूते भी हैं, तो आप वहां अपनी मौजूदगी की एविडेंस छोड़ देते हैं, जिसमें डीएनए एविडेंस भी होता है। हर इंसान का डीएनए उसका अपना यूनिक होता है, एक्सेप्ट फॉर द केस ऑफ आइडेंटिकल ट्विंस। सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम यह है कि हमारे देश में रेप के साथ सोशल स्टिग्मा अटैच्ड होता है। बहुत से केसेस अनरिपोर्टेड जाते हैं और अगर रिपोर्ट हो भी जाते हैं तो देर हो जाने से एविडेंस डिग्रेड हो जाती है। एडवांस कंट्रीज में डीएनए की नॉलेज होने की वजह से एविडेंस टाइम से कलेक्ट हो पाती है। इसके अलावा एडवांस कंट्रीज में क्रिमिनल डीएनए डेटाबेसेस हैं, जिससे क्रिमिनल को रिपीट ऑफेंस करने पर डीएनए की मदद से बहुत आसानी से आइडेंटिफाई किया जा सकता है। दैट्स द पावर ऑफ डीएनए टेस्टिंग। इसीलिए इसको हर रेप केस में करना आवश्यक है और इंश्योर करना है कि एविडेंस सही तरीके से कलेक्ट हो, तभी रेपिस्ट कांपेंगे कोई भी गलत काम करने से पहले। डीएनए फाइट्स रेप, सेव द एविडेंस।
So in fact, as Dr. Sehajpal there talking about the fact that DNA does fight rape and save the evidence, that's really important. Dr. Sehajpal now joins us live from Simla, Himachal Pradesh to share his experience, and also after his presentations, we will take questions from the audience. A reminder to all those who are joining us on this webinar, you can share your comments and questions for Dr. Sehajpal through YouTube. And you can post your questions or even comments in the comment section of the YouTube link. Over to you, Dr. Sehajpal.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. A very good afternoon to all of you. So, without taking much of time, I'll start with the presentation. So, if we can have the next slide, please. So, prior to going into sample collection and preservation, I'll discuss some cases which are worth mentioning over here. Next slide, please. Next. One of the very important case which we dealt was a rape and murder of a school teacher. A school teacher did not reach home till late in the evening, and when a search was ensued for her, her body was found barely 100 meters short of her place from her home in the fields in some bushy area. And the medical examination confirmed that she had been sexually assaulted prior to murder. Next, please. These are some of the pictures of that case. Next, please. We conducted the DNA profiling of the swabs, and as you know, in our Indian system, like how the police works is, first of all, they started suspecting the brother-in-law of the victim because he had some scratches on his face, and the police initially thought that because he has scratches on his face, probably he is the person who has committed the crime. But actually, those scratches had come because of the search, because he was searching for the body. He got those scratches when he entered that bushy area. So DNA profiling, with help of DNA profiling, we exonerated that person. So brother-in-law of the victim was not involved in that case. And slowly, after that, the next suspect was the husband of the victim. And it was the police was supposedly believing that because the husband was on leave, so he can be the possible person who might have committed the crime. Again, DNA profiling exonerated that person, and finally it was coming out that maybe some of the students might be involved, and so some of the samples of students were also collected, but none of them matched. And a forensic investigation of case also helps. Not only the DNA investigation, a forensic investigation also helps a lot during the initial investigation. So the scene of crime investigation was conducted by a worthy director, and what was found at the scene of crime was that there were no drag marks in that area. From the trail to the point where the act was committed, there were no drag marks, which clearly indicated that the person who committed the crime had brute force. He could carry the victim, he lifted the victim clear of the ground and carried the victim about 15 meters into the bushy area and committed the crime over there, and even was possible for him to muffle the cries of the victim. Next, please. So several individuals were nabbed in that case, and their blood samples were sent to us for DNA profiling, and but none of them matched. None of them matched. Finally, one girl in that area complained that an unknown individual tried to overpower her, but she luckily escaped. Police sprang into action because the modus operandi was slightly similar, and immediately they were able to arrest a stoutly built person, and his blood sample was sent for DNA profiling. And when his blood sample was profiled, the profile which came out matched conclusively with the profile which was found from the vaginal swabs of the victim. Next, please. Further investigation revealed that the perpetrator of this crime was a history sheeter, and he was recently released from Tihar jail after serving a 7-year sentence. Now, this fellow was originally from Nepal. Now, one thing is very important over here. It was just a matter of chance that we were able to crack this case, because police was luckily able to apprehend the right person. Had this person moved out of the district, had he moved out of the state, had he moved out of the country, there was no chance of solving this case, because we don't have a criminal DNA database like the USA or other advanced countries. As this person was originally a history sheeter, had his DNA profile been available with the system, if we had a centralized DNA database system and a search system, we could have definitely solved the case within a very, very short period of time. So similarly, same goes holds true for other cases of similar type, where actually many of the cases end up without any proper leads due to lack of a criminal DNA database. Next, please. We got very important case in 2011. One girl was missing for more than 2 months, and police got intelligence that last she was seen with 2 boys. The same boys were interrogated, and they revealed that they had a sexual contact with the girl, and ultimately they killed the girl and they buried the girl in a cowshed. And when the autopsy was conducted upon exhumation, it was found that the girl was pregnant. She was 1 month pregnant, and the fetus that was sent for DNA profiling. However, as the sample was wrongly preserved, it was preserved in formaldehyde. Despite our best possible efforts, we were not able to get a proper was not able to get a profile out of it, and because of that, the case failed. Had the sample been preserved properly, we could have got a DNA profile out of it, and the accused could have been held guilty very easily. Next, please. Similarly, we got one very interesting case in 2018. This was a case of incest by father with the daughter, and in this case, retained product of conceptions, they were sent for DNA profiling. And here we need to understand that random sampling does not always work in case of DNA profiling. So there were some more than 20 small pieces which were sent for DNA profiling, which were the retained product of conceptions. Normally, a person would say, okay, let's take 3 or 4 samples and let's do the DNA profiling. If they match, then we can settle the case. But actually, what we did is we took about 4 or 5 samples, and we saw that of none of them were matching with that of the accused. They were actually the samples which are of maternal origin totally, and they were matching completely with the mother. Next, please. So instead of going for what call uh, random sampling, we profiled the entire 20 small pieces, and luckily, out of this 20 small pieces, in the second attempt, we found two samples which matched with that of father, because this was the sample of the fetus. So half of the alleles, they were coming from the side of the mother, and half of the alleles, they were coming from the side of the father. So one has to be very, very careful that random sampling is not something which works always in case of DNA profiling. Next, please. So this is the profiles which will come up. So you can see most of the product of conception, they are given in the central column, central 2 columns. So they were matching exactly with that of the victim. And on the extreme right, we have the FDA card of the accused. And when we did the product of conception, so 2 samples in that, they turned out to be those which had half of the alleles from the side of the father and half of the alleles from the side of the mother. So we were able to say fix this case. Next, please. Next, please. Now coming down to collection and preservation of biological evidence for DNA profiling. In matter of state versus Amarchand, Honorable High Court of Himachal Pradesh, they found that there are certain problems with respect to sample preservation, and because of that, many of times forensic reports are not conclusive. The Honorable Court desired to know what is the procedure for taking sample to conduct the scientific investigation like blood, DNA by the investigating officer or by the officers. Forensic labs reports indicated that samples were insufficient and not properly preserved. Uh, in this regard, I would like to mention that way back in 2010, we had prepared a pamphlet about how the sample should be collected for DNA profiling, and that was circulated through Director Health Services to the entire medical fraternity and to the police officers, to the Director General of Police. And the same was submitted to the Honorable High Court of Himachal Pradesh, and Honorable High Court of Himachal Pradesh has incorporated those protocols in its directions. Next, please. Next slide, please. Now, one of the most important pertaining to sample and preservation is, it's worth mentioning that collection and preservation of samples has remained an issue with DNA profiling. The success of entire exercise depends on sample collection and preservation, and there are wrong approaches and wrong notions. So one of the wrong notion which is still circulating in the society is that is called as DNA fingerprinting, though the right word is DNA profiling, and many a times people think DNA fingerprinting is something which is related to the conventional fingerprinting, and many a times we have seen that fingers of the dead bodies, they have been cut and sent for DNA profiling. The word is written is sent for fingertips for DNA fingerprinting. So there's a wrong notion still floating, and still some of the medical fraternity is not aware about this thing. The DNA profiling and conventional fingerprinting, they are entirely different things. Next, please. Now, if we look at vaginal swabs, these are some of the examples which I'm citing. In this case, cotton gauze has been used to make a vaginal swab. So one needs to understand that there has to be a proper substratum on which the sample has to be collected, not just anything. Not anything makeshift which is available with the doctor, that should not be used. There should be a standardized approach for sample collection, and a standardized approach for sample collection in case of sexual assaults is something which is our country is still lacking. Next, please. So again, in this case, a wooden stick and cotton has been used for preparation of a vaginal swab, which has been used for collection of sample. Next, please. Now, many a times, wet clothes, they are collected and they are packed in polythene, and by the time they reach a forensic lab, you have huge amount of fungal growth on them, and ultimately you get DNA out of it, but it is more a fungal, non-human DNA, a fungal and bacterial DNA as compared to the human DNA. And I would like to mention over here is that in case of sexual assaults, we go for something which is called as differential extraction. We try to separate out the male fraction, which is the sperm fraction, and the epithelial cells, vaginal cell fraction from the vaginal swab or any other exhibit comes. And if samples are degraded, then this process is jeopardized. So if the spermatozoa, they are not intact, they degrade, then it will be very, very difficult to separate out the male DNA and female DNA fractions separately. Next, please. Now, further, in older days, vaginal slides, they were collected and sent to forensic labs for examination through microscopy. And it is very much clear that microscopic glass slides are basically meant for microscopic examination. They are not meant for DNA profiling. Many a times we have observed that the medical officer, they take the swab, they prepare the slide out of the swab, and they discard the swab. They are not sending the swab, they are discarding the source, the main source which is containing maximum amount of evidence, that is discarded, and only the slide is sent to the lab. And slides, normally they may go for biological and serological examination. They might stain the slide. During that time it might get contaminated, and further, the amount of material on a slide is much lesser as compared to a swab. The ideal requirement is a swab, not a slide, as far as DNA profiling is concerned. Next, please. Similarly, many times we have seen that bone samples or other samples, they are packed in polythene without desiccation, and again, when they reach a forensic lab, they are in very, very sorry state of affairs. Next, please. In this case, this is again a case of a fetus which has been sent for fixing paternity, and in this case, a FDA card has also been sent and a femur bone has also been sent, and both of them have been packed in a polythene pouch together. So you can see when you open that you are giving perfect anaerobic conditions for the samples to rot. Your FDA card which is sent over, the FDA card which is sent over here by the medical officer is again in wet condition. There is some amount of fungal growth, and you can get the smell of putrefaction also. So these things, they're basically they're basically making the process difficult. Had the samples been preserved properly, getting a proper DNA, a good DNA profile would be much easier as compared to this one. Next one, please. Similarly, a FDA card which has been packed in a leucoplast. So ultimately, when you're trying to open the parcel, you're trying to open the leucoplast, you're actually tearing apart the FDA card. Again, that will again has issues like your while presenting in court, and also because the FDA card is torn, or such type of parcels are very difficult to handle. Next, please. Now, this is another problem which we faced was those are the people who are working in case of DNA profiling who use the the punching method for sampling from DNA profile from a FDA card. 1 mm or 1.2 mm punch is more than enough to get a DNA profile. And but what we observed is the one which you are seeing on the left side image is a proper preservation, like small amount of one blood drop has been put onto FDA card on the circle. It has been dried and sent for DNA profiling. But many a times what I've seen is, as you see on the right side, like there are certain FDA cards where the medical officer tries to fill in the entire circle, just like a kindergarten student tries to fill in this entire circle with a crayon or color. So what happens is, in that process, the FDA cards, they get overloaded with blood, and these overloaded cards, they have a big problem if you try to use the punching method for DNA profiling. And those of you who have used the Y-filer or the older generation kits, you will see that such FDA cards, they take much longer time to clear up the heme content. And if you try to amplify these samples with the older kits like the Y-filer or something like that, you will see that many of the alleles are dropping, or at many times there are no amplifications. And the process also becomes quite lengthy, whereas the FDA is to quickly get the DNA profile as soon from a sample, that it is basically to hasten the extraction process. And so keeping in this view, we developed, next slide please, we developed a new method for extraction of DNA from such samples. And by this method, even if your sample is overloaded, you can extract the DNA from such samples. You can purify such samples, such FDA cards, in just about 15 minutes. So we published that last year. Next, please. And many times we see that exhibits, they are packed in paper. Now paper, these samples are to be refrigerated, and you know that refrigeration facilities are not very good in our country. And if these are paper bags, if they are put for they are sealed also, stitched and sealed also, and when they are putting them in refrigerator, many times there might be power failure or something like that. There'll be frost which is deposited on the exhibits, and when the time you take out these parcels, there'll be the pieces of paper will be falling apart. So it becomes very difficult to keep the things intact, and by the time they have to go back to the courts for evidence and all those things. So such things do have problems with respect to chain of custody and storage. Next, please. Similarly, many times yes, from old cases, we have problems in the entire country. Like say in the last decade, there was DNA profiling was not available in most of the labs, and when the cases come up for trial, in recent years, many or maybe the accused has not been nabbed for more than a decade, and ultimately when the accused is nabbed, the honorable courts, they desire that DNA profiling may be conducted in this case. And by the time the parcels they come out from the malkhanas of the police stations or wherever they are stored to the lab, they are infested with termites, and getting DNA or a DNA profile from such samples becomes very difficult. Here I would like to mention that you have the projects like the Innocence projects in countries like USA, where the samples, 30 years old samples, 15 years old samples, 20-year-old samples, they are being subjected to DNA profiling. Whereas if we think of achieving the same feat in our country, it will be very difficult, because I wonder if our parcels survive such a long time. Next, please. As far as DNA degradation is concerned, many people have a wrong notion that DNA is supposed to be staying forever. So Hindu scriptures very clearly state that yat bhavati tat nashyati, whatever is created, that is to be destroyed. Same is true for DNA also, and DNA gets destroyed with bacterial and fungal growth, moisture and temperature. So when people say that they were able to extract DNA from 30,000-year-old bones of Neanderthals, they are not basically looking at, you are looking at samples which have been preserved in very dry conditions, and you are not going for individual identification over there. You are not doing the current day DNA profiling of doing individual identification, but you are actually looking at how they differ from different species and how they are related. So the technology is very different, but as far as our things are concerned, the samples need to be preserved very properly. So in order to stop the bacterial and fungal growth, moisture has to be stopped, and temperature has to be maintained low. So if you talk of this, maintaining a low temperature is very difficult as compared to as far as our country is concerned, because having refrigeration from the scene of crime till the lab will be very difficult. The only possible way, a simple possible way, is somehow we have to get rid of the moisture and collect samples on such things which remain free of moisture, and such that the biological evidence material resists degradation for a longer time, and they reach in a fairly intact condition to the forensic labs. Next, please. So as far as collection of blood samples is concerned, they may be collected from a live subject, dead body, clotted blood, stains, wet or dry, or from the scene of crime. Next, please. So what we suggest is blood samples, they can be collected on EDTA tubes, vacuum EDTA tubes, or FDA cards, or cotton gauze. Now here we need to mention one thing is that sample preservation is not something which is like a rocket science. It's a very simple science. Only thing we have to take care is that your sample should be collected on a clean, sterile substratum, and it should be desiccated, or something has to be done that the sample remains dry or it remains at a low temperature. That is the main funda as far as the collection and preservation of sample is concerned. So if FDA cards and vacuum tubes are not available, a sterile gauze can also work for sample collection. Only thing is that it has to be desiccated prior to packing the sample. Next, please. Similarly, as far as previous one, please. As far as dead bodies are concerned, samples can be collected in a vial, but the best way is they should be collected on a gauze or a cotton which is dry. Here I would like to mention that many times The normal FDA cards, they are used for collection of blood samples from from dead bodies. But many times what we have seen is, in case of the samples which are coming from slightly old dead bodies, the yield of punching system is not good enough to get a proper DNA profile. So here, not the normal FDA card, but FDA elute card. There's a specific card called as the FDA elute. That card should be used for as far as the dead bodies is concerned. Next, please. Similarly, clotted blood stains, dried blood stains, clotted in paper. The clotted, dried and clotted blood should be collected in a paper envelope. Clothes and other material bearing blood stains can be packed in a paper or a cloth bag. Clothes bearing wet stain need to be air dried till the stains are fully dried, and these clothes should bearing the stains should not be packed in wet condition, because that promotes bacterial and fungal growth. Next, please. Similarly, blood from the scene of crime, it should be either scraped with the help of a trial blade and collected in a paper envelope. Alternately, it's better to collect the substratum along with the stain. Suppose there's a tile, you can remove a small portion of the tile or a resin or a cloth. That should be removed along with the blood stain rather than scrapping it. That is a very good way of collecting the sample and preserving it. Wet blood should be collected on cotton gauze and swab, and it should be air dried prior to packing. Next, please. Clothes. The clothes, they have vital evidence like the blood, the semen, saliva and fibers, etc. And clothes should be always dried prior to packing, and should be have some amount of way that there should be air circulation in that. The clothes should never, bearing a blood stain or semen stain, they should never be packed in a polythene pack. It should not be totally airtight ever, as it degrades the sample due to bacterial growth. Next, please. As far as DNA profiling is concerned, I've seen many times that the medical officer, he is collecting the semen of the accused for DNA profiling. So that is not actually required, because every tissue of your body from head to the toe contains the same DNA. The DNA from head to toe is the same. So the best sample is blood sample. So it is not necessary to collect a semen sample until unless there is something very, very different, something rare like chimerism or something like that. There are two types of DNA profiling in a person. Maybe in a paternity case that might happen, but that is very, very rare. The ideal sample which is to be collected is the blood sample, not the semen sample. Semen stains or clothes or any other substratum need to be air dried before forwarding for DNA profiling, and never pack clothes or any other substratum bearing wet semen stains, as this will lead to bacterial and fungal growth. Next, please. Saliva from bite marks. Many cases, the only important evidence is the saliva stain which is left, on the bite mark. And these saliva stains, I've seen in one case, like saliva from a bite mark, it was swabbed with a huge cotton ball which was moistened with water or saline, and that swab was dabbed onto a FDA card. Now already there is very little amount of evidence. You are spreading it onto a huge surface area of a cotton ball, and then finally you are dabbing it onto FDA card. So what is happening is, you are making the evidence more and more dilute, and you are spreading it over a large surface. So that is actually problematic for DNA analysis. So the best way is to collect a swab from the bite mark area, preferably one from inside the circumference of the bite mark and one from the outer circumference of the bite mark, and that swab with minimal amount of saline, and that swab should be thoroughly dried prior to packing. Next, please. Now, as far as the most important evidence which is collected from sexual assault cases, that is the vaginal swab, vulval swabs, cervical swabs, anal swabs or oral swabs from sexual assault cases. This is very important because I already showed you what sort of swabs are being used in certain cases. Like any substratum is being used for a wooden twig or cotton gauze is being used for collection of such samples. There are several issues which can creep up during DNA profiling because of such sampling. So first of all, swabs, they should be collected on a standard swab which is made for collection of samples in case of sexual assault cases. And these swabs, they need to be dried prior to packing. And suppose if the swab does not have a system to take care of desiccation, you can place a few crystals of anhydrous silica in the tube in which you are placing the swab. Anhydrous silica is always bluish in color, and as it gathers moisture, it becomes whitish in color. Now, if there is silica available in the tube, it will try to absorb most of the moisture which is present in the swab, and that will check the degradation of your swab and the evidence which is present on the swab. Please, previous one, please. And one has to remember that slides are basically meant for microscopy. So don't make a mistake of just preparing a slide and discarding the swab. Swabs are vital for DNA profiling. They need to be sent under all circumstances to the forensic lab for DNA profiling. And I would like to mention over here that because nowadays standard kits are available for collection of evidence from sexual assault victims, it is therefore requested that such swabs and kits should be used, because that is ensuring that sample is being properly collected, and it will also have good impact on the downstream DNA analysis. And I would like to mention over here, like suppose if you are collecting a sample on a cotton or a cotton gauze, who is going to certify that the swab on which you have collected sample was free of extraneous DNA? It's a very big issue that can creep up during the trials. So it is very necessary that you use standard systems for all this. Next, please. Similarly, another evidence which is available are the condoms, which are in case of sexual assault cases. The outer of the surface of the condom will bear the secretions from the victim, and similarly the inner surface is supposed to have the cells and secretions of semen from the assailant. And the outer and inner surface should be swabbed separately for DNA profiling, and these swabs should be desiccated prior to packing, and the condom should be submitted to the lab at the earliest. Next, please. Similarly, penile swab and urethral swab, they must be collected on a sterile swab, and sterile water and saline should be used for moistening, and desiccation of swabs is of utmost importance as far as the preservation is concerned. Next, please. Similarly, sanitary pads and tampons, they should be preserved in case of sexual assault cases, and sanitary pads, they should be detached from the underpants and packed separately, and packing should ensure air circulation. Placing few anhydrous silica crystals in the container helps decrease the moisture content. Next, please. Similarly, many times there are tissues, organs, mutilated remains. They can be collected in normal saline and sent to the lab, but you have to ensure that the sample gets submitted within 24 hours, because normal saline is a good medium for bacteria to grow. So if you don't have such a quick response available to transport the samples within 24 hours, the alternative way is to preserve the sample in absolute ethanol or isopropyl alcohol. Many times I see absolute ethanol is not easily available, so because of the excise laws and other things. So in that case, isopropyl alcohol can be used, as this checks the putrefaction of sample for a longer time, and we mostly recommend in our state that you preserve the sample in isopropyl alcohol because it's easily available, and after that it's also easy to get a DNA profile from such samples. If possible, dried skin tissue samples can also be collected and sent for DNA profiling, and in such cases, if the sample is dried, no preservative is required. And one watchword over here is caution is that formaldehyde has not to be used under any circumstances. Next, please. Next slide, please. Similarly, fetus is also vital evidence which is available in case of sexual assault cases which lead it to a pregnancy or something like that. And in this case, tissue material, a muscle tissue in normal saline can be submitted if the sample can be submitted within 24 hours. Alternately, the tissue material can be preserved in isopropyl alcohol or absolute ethanol, and it can be sent to the lab if you don't have refrigeration or quick transport facility available. Or any other long bone like femur can be collected and sent for the DNA profiling. The entire fetus can also be preserved in normal saline or absolute ethanol if it's small in size. It can be sent for DNA profiling. But again, we need to remember that formaldehyde has not to be used in any such cases. Many times it has happened that we got a call from the investigating officer that we have collected a fetus and we sent for DNA profiling. So we made a call immediately, like kindly check whether you have preserved it in alcohol or in formalin. So the medical officer here, the investigating officer clearly indicated that the sample has been preserved in formaldehyde. So we took the initiative. We said immediately take it back to the medical officer and get the sample thoroughly washed and get it preserved in alcohol instead of formalin. So such that the formalin does not percolate very deep inside the tissue, and in such cases we were able to get a DNA profile properly. Next please. So similarly, bones and teeth are also available in certain cases. So one should prefer to collect long bones for DNA profiling, and the order of preference is femur, tibia, humerus, molar teeth, and ribs. Dry bones and teeth should be they should be packed. They should be desiccated prior to packing, and they should not be wrapped in polythene. And avoid collection of bones like vertebrae, phalanges, skull bones, etc. As far as DNA profiling from bones is concerned, nowadays people also advocate a bone from the skull called as the petrous that can also be sent for DNA profiling. Next please. Similarly, here are also vital evidence in case of sexual assault cases, and one has to remember that these hair samples, they are never to be washed. They are to be collected as such, packaged separately, along with any foreign material which is sticking onto the pubic hair or their combings. They need not to be removed, and it has to be packed as such. And any foreign hair on the body, clothing should be collected. Do look forward for matted hair which may contain semen or blood. If any body fluid, blood, saliva, semen, etc. is present on the hair samples, dry the sample thoroughly and pack it in a paper envelope. Reference hair of victim and accused should also be collected for DNA profiling. Next please. Nail clippings and scrapings may contain blood tissue of the assailant and vice versa. But many times I have seen in case of sexual assault followed by murder, the medical officers, they sometimes they pluck the entire nail, they uproot it and they send it. That is the wrong way. You have to take out only the clippings of the nail with a sterile clipper, and that need to be sent for DNA profiling. And they need to be packed separately. It should be collected from both the hands and should be stored in a sterile envelope or a container. Next please. Further, you need to remember is that in case of paternity cases, you need to collect the blood sample of the child, mother, and the alleged father or fathers. For identifying a deceased or unidentified bodies, blood samples of the nearest possible blood relatives like mother, father, and children should be preferred. In cases of sexual assault cases, get the vaginal and other swabs dried at room temperature prior to packing. In sexual assault cases, reference blood sample of victim and accused is required for DNA profiling. In case blood sample is not available from dead body, collect tissue from the deep skeletal muscles. Next please. Always use sterile and disposable gloves and equipment for sample collection. Always collect samples in duplicate. Always pack the samples after thoroughly drying at room temperature in shade. Pack all the exhibits separately. Use a paper cloth bag to collect exhibits, to pack exhibits to ensure circulation of air. Prefer to send dried blood samples. Prefer collecting long bones. Next please. Do not use same gloves and equipment for handling artifacts supposed to be from different origins. Never pack exhibits like stained clothes, weapons, swabs in wet conditions. Never make the lid of vial containing dried swab, etc. fully airtight to avoid putrefaction. Never use polythene bags for packing evidence. Never pack DNA and viscera sample together. Very important in rape and murder cases. We have seen in many rape and murder cases, the viscera samples and the samples for DNA profiling are packed in a same container, in a same box, where you have the jars which are containing the viscera and the tubes which are containing swabs and all those things. So many a times is the viscera samples, they leak and they mix with the samples which have been collected for DNA profiling, ultimately ruins the entire process. And similarly, charred bones, they are not good always, but one should try for them. And one of the most important watchword is, and formalin should not be added to any of the sample which comes from a sexual assault case, specifically the tissue or fetus, etc. Next please. We have created an email way back in 2010. If anyone has any queries, they can send these drop an email to us, and we will respond within 24 hours as far as sample preservation is concerned. Thank you so much.
Well, and thank you, Dr. Sehajpal, for a very, very informative presentation. I can just see from the kind of response we've been getting from the audience, they have just about so many questions. But everyone, I think, very highly appreciative of a very detailed presentation that you've given, and I suspect your email inbox is going to be bombarded with many questions which you shared. So I think people should just take the opportunity and note down that email ID on the screens, and also send your questions. We've got some time now, Dr. Sehajpal, to take a few questions. I'm going to quickly go through the questions so we can try and take as many. Sahil Liaquat Sheikh and Esther Lalringzo both have sent separate questions, but they are similar in nature. In a gang rape case, how hard is it to separate DNA from the forensic specialist? What are the SOPs and functions performed by the DNA analyst? So essentially, in a gang rape case, how hard is it to separate and get different DNA evidence?
See, typically speaking, is like in a gang rape case, many times we see that the DNA content from most of the assailants is available. If after performing a differential extraction, you can see you're getting clear, though it will be a mixed profile, but it's quite possible to identify the individuals based on the peak height and all those things. But again, if you look at these things statistically, suppose if there are more than three or more assailants, and if the peak heights are very, very similar, then it becomes very difficult to pinpoint the people, because when you have three or more people involved, and if the peak height is very, very similar, then statistically it becomes very difficult to identify that yes, this combination belongs to this person. Maybe YSTR markers may help you to a certain level, but again, that again is bit problematic. And what we see is, like in gang rape cases, we are able to identify two or three, maximum three profiles. Beyond that, many times it is difficult to say, though the profiles are visible, so one may think of giving an opinion. But if you think in terms of statistics, the one might be overstepping the domain, because statistically it will not be very, very safe to pinpoint a person when there are more than three or more people involved, and if the peak heights are very, very similar.
And the SOPs that can be adopted, very briefly, to try and get a better sampling and evidence?
As far as the DNA lab is concerned, like once you have the samples for analysis, all the labs, they have a standard protocols like for differential extraction. So that essentially tries to separate out the male fraction and the female fraction. Now the peak height which comes out later on will depend on what is the amount of contribution by each perpetrator. So if peak heights are very similar, the things are very difficult to interpret. But if peak heights are different, the things are quite easier as compared to that to interpret.
All right. Well, thank you. Moving on to a question from Mithira Raji. How about cases where the case is reported after many years? Is DNA still relevant?
DNA may be relevant, may not be relevant, but as far as the biological evidence collected from the body of victim is concerned, yes, you will not be getting any DNA evidence after so many years. But if yes, like if you think of the Monica Lewinsky case, so there the sample was preserved on the undergarments of the victim. So in such cases, if certain cloth is preserved or some clothing is preserved, then there is a possibility of getting a profile or fixing the things. But as far as from the body of the victim is concerned, the evidence starts degrading immediately with the time. So after certain days, it will be not possible to get any proper evidence from the body of the victim. So that's why I think your campaign is also all about that. DNA evidence people need to be aware about the DNA evidence. They have to come forward and report the incident immediately, and they have the collection of the evidence has to be done in the shortest possible time.
In fact, a follow-up question, Dr. Sehajpal, from Mahiyar Patel. What is the worst degradation reason which result in zero result DNA testing? So I think you've just talked about time delay being one. What are the other reasons then?
See, time delay is, as I told you, that degradation basically occurs because of the bacterial and fungal growth. If the sample is not collected and preserved properly, there are bacteria and fungus which are growing on that sample. The sample is getting exposed to temperature and all those things. That will degrade your sample. So if those factors are not taken care of, your samples will go bad and ultimately not be getting results.
Okay. One more question. Rajesh Verma asked that as far as DNA databases are concerned, have you ever tried to solve a cold case, or do you know of any cold case being solved using saved DNA profile of examined cases? And if not, what have been the possible limitations?
See, in our lab, we try to look for older profiles, but only thing is because we don't have a centralized DNA database in the country. So if you don't have a database, you cannot ensure a search. So that is a big problem. It has to be done manually. We have tried a couple of times, but ultimately we were not successful as far as that case was concerned.
Okay, I'm going to try and take in one more question before we go to the main panel discussion. Mrinalini Bhaskar asks that what about the availability of STR database in India and which we use for human DNA profiling?
STR DNA database or allele frequencies? Can it?
But the question is just the availability of STR database in India, which we use for human DNA profiling.
So if you talk of the criminal DNA database, it's not available at the moment. And as far as basically there's a big drawback in our country. Like many of the people, they are not using statistics at the moment. That is because we are simply comparing profile with the profile, whether it's matching or not, they're not matching. So basically, when you're interpreting a mixture and other things, you should be going in for statistics, and that is only possible, or whether you're trying to interpret a case of paternity or maternity, you need to have allele frequency data available. Allele frequency is data basically talking about the frequency of allele in that population, the population concerned about which you are making the studies. So there are some good publications coming out from certain labs and certain regions of the country, but still a lot has to be done in that regard. We are far behind many countries. We need to have proper allele frequencies regarding all the population of country.
So one final question. In fact, Vajagathali M as well as Shweta Jaswal have asked similar questions, and a very interesting one, of course. What happens if the suspect has an identical twin? Is there any way that DNA forensic technology can help us catch the real culprit in this case? So in that case, will fingerprinting tell them apart? Will DNA tell them apart? Will it be sperm count? What are the ways if we have identical twins to nab the real culprit?
See, as far as what I can comment is, as far as the STR technology is concerned, the current technology, it cannot tell you, it cannot differentiate between two identical twins, because the DNA will essentially be same. But now the technology is in the making, because as a person ages, there's a process called as DNA methylation that occurs. So these methylation factors and other things, they vary from person to person. So possibly when that technology comes in, it will be possible to differentiate exactly who is the person who contributed to the DNA in a sexual assault cases, whether the brother or his identical twin.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Dr. Sehajpal. There are just tons of questions I've got for you here. But what we'll do, we'll try and come to some of these questions in the panel discussion, the larger panel discussion that's just going to follow. And of course, I suspect many people will also be writing to you on their email. So please try and answer as many questions as you can. Well, moving on from this. All the other specialists are going to be with us now for a very detailed discussion. Thank you again so much, Dr. Sehajpal. Our panel discussion essentially is looking at the role of forensic DNA in fighting crime, expediting justice, and a special focus is on handling post-lockdown surge in sexual crimes. Well, someone who has seen firsthand how a case can be made or how a case falls apart from the lack of strong evidence is Dr. Pinky Anand. Considered one of India's top lawyers, Dr. Anand is currently the Additional Solicitor General of India and a senior advocate at the Supreme Court. With a distinguished practice in diverse areas, she has numerous national and international awards and recognitions to her name, including the French National Order of Merit by the President of the French Republic. She's also been awarded for excellence in law and Bharat Nirman. This is Dr. Pinky Anand and what she has to say about DNA as a crime-fighting tool and why we need to preserve the evidence.
जितना डर एक लड़की को लगता है, क्या आपको लगता है एक लड़के को भी ऐसे ही डर लगता है? क्या आपको लगता है कि लड़का बस में चढ़ने से पहले कभी सोचता है जैसे लड़की सोचती है कि मैं खाली बस में चल रही हूँ? क्या एक लड़का कभी अपने कपड़े ठीक करता है जैसे लड़की को कहा जाता है कि अपने कपड़े ठीक करे? शायद एक दिन ऐसा आएगा जब लड़का भी कुछ करने से पहले उसका अंजाम सोचेगा। प्रॉब्लम तो ये है कि हमारे देश में लड़की कुछ भी करने से पहले उसका अंजाम सोच के चलती है, जबकि लड़के को ऐसा कुछ नहीं कहा जाता। इसीलिए शायद रेप एक बर्निंग इशू हमारे देश में बन चुका है। रेपिस्ट सोचता है उसका कोई क्या बिगाड़ लेगा, आज छेड़ा है, सीटी मारी है, कल रेप कर देगा। कौन सा कानून तक बात जाएगी, लेकिन अब कानून तक बात जाएगी, उसका डीएनए उसको लेके जाएगा। डीएनए यानी बॉडी की आपकी वो पहचान जो आपकी बॉडी के कण कण में मिलती है, आपके खून में, आपके बाल में, आपके नाखून में, आपके थूक में। किसी भी रेप केस में ये मुमकिन नहीं है कि क्राइम सीन पे रेपिस्ट का डीएनए नहीं छूटे और उसकी बुनियाद के ऊपर वो पकड़ा ना जाए। डीएनए एविडेंस से रेपिस्ट ज़रूर पकड़ा जाएगा, क्योंकि डीएनए एविडेंस दुनिया की बेस्ट क्राइम फाइटिंग टेक्नोलॉजी है। डीएनए एविडेंस की इम्पोर्टेंस देखते हुए और ये मानते हुए कि ये बहुत साइंटिफिक और कंक्लूसिव है, सरकार भी इसी कोशिश में है कि डीएनए टेक्नोलॉजी बिल जल्द से जल्द लागू हो जाए। वो अभी भी स्टैंडिंग कमेटी के सामने डिस्कशन पर है। उसमें हमारी कोशिश ये है कि नेशनल ऑफेंडर्स डेटाबेस बने, जो बाकी देशों में भी है, जिसके आधार पर सीरियल रेपिस्ट जल्द से जल्द पकड़ा जाए। पिछले 2 साल से जो हमारे देश में जागरूकता इस विषय पर बढ़ गई है, उसी कारण से डीएनए क्राइम टेस्टिंग कम से कम 2 गुना ज़्यादा बढ़ चुकी है। हम सबको 2 बातों का ख्याल रखना पड़ेगा। रेप केस में रेप एविडेंस बचा के रखना है और दूसरा डीएनए टेस्टिंग की डिमांड करनी है। अगर हम ये चीज़ें कर सकते हैं, फिर देखिए इस देश को, इस शहर को और इस पूरी दुनिया को हम किस प्रकार से अपनी बच्चियों के लिए सुरक्षित बना सकते हैं। DNA fights rape. Save the evidence.
Well, right, Dr. Pinky Anand there explaining the importance of DNA and the timely processing of DNA evidence. Another person who has been using DNA to help nab and convict criminals is Keshav Kumar, the director of the Anti-Corruption Bureau in Gujarat. Mr. Kumar is a career police officer and has served in the police force for over 33 years. He has used the applications of forensics in crime investigation, and which has helped directly in the conviction of 54 people so far, and that's based solely on the use of forensic applications during investigation. Keshav Kumar ji is part of our panel, and we look forward to sharing and hearing about his experiences. Now, while catching criminals and securing their conviction is vital, it's equally important, if not more, to ensure that innocents don't end up being convicted or languish in jail. Senior Supreme Court advocate Vivek Sood is passionate about the constitutional importance of legal rights of prisoners and is the promoter of the Society for Criminal Justice, an NGO that provides legal assistance and counseling to under-trials and convicts in the jail in Jaipur. Mr. Sood has also written several critically acclaimed books examining the Information Technology Act of 2000 and contemporary issues, including those on cyber pornography, criminal liability of intermediaries, apart from the emergence of the right to internet as a fundamental right. This is Vivek Sood and his take on the importance of DNA in tackling crime.
जिस जगह पे किसी का रेप होता है, वह जगह क्राइम सीन तो होती ही है, पर इंसाफ दिलाने के लिए वो किसी कोर्ट से कम नहीं है। एक केस में 8 साल लगे, 2000 स्टेटमेंट्स रिकॉर्ड हुए और उसके बाद फाइनली वो कल्प्रिट पकड़ा गया। आप जानते हैं कैसे? अपने डीएनए सैंपल की वजह से। डीएनए आपकी बॉडी का वो यूनिक आइडेंटिफायर है जो हर बॉडी पार्ट में पाया जाता है। आपके स्किन में, आपके ब्लड में, आपके थूक में, आपके नेल्स में। रेपिस्ट लाख कोशिश करने के बावजूद ये भूल जाता है कि वो अपना डीएनए क्राइम सीन में छोड़ देता है। कोर्ट में अक्सर विटनेसेस होस्टाइल हो जाते हैं, मगर डीएनए एक ऐसा सबूत है जिसकी बुनियाद पे किसी रेपिस्ट का बचना मुश्किल ही नहीं, नामुमकिन है। एक खून का कतरा आपको जस्टिस दिलवा सकता है। डीएनए टेस्टिंग की डिमांड से कानून का कोई भी गलत फायदा नहीं उठा सकता और ना ही कोई गलत आदमी उसकी वजह से पकड़ा जा सकता है। इसलिए हर रेप केस में डीएनए टेस्टिंग की डिमांड करें। इस एविडेंस को हमने ध्यान से कलेक्ट करना है। तभी हम मिलके इस घिनौने क्राइम के रेट को कम कर सकेंगे। टेस्टिंग की डिमांड करें। DNA fights rape. Save the evidence. अभी हम मिलके इस घिनौने क्राइम के रेट को कम कर सकेंगे।
Right, so we've got our full panel with us. Dr. Pinky Anand will be joining us shortly, but before we start, I'd like to once again remind our audience, those who are watching this webinar, that they can take part in this discussion. Our hashtag is DNA Fights Rape. You can tweet your questions or share this webinar using that hashtag or interact via Instagram, Facebook, and post your comments and questions via YouTube as well. So, in fact, our focus today is the fact that, post-lockdown, are we already seeing a surge in crime, especially crimes against women and sexual crimes, and how do we try and deal with that? So, I'm going to ask Mr. Keshav Kumar if he can perhaps answer that question of just how worried are you with the relaxation of the lockdown coupled with the slowing down of the global and the Indian economy and the impact on law and order and the leading perhaps crimes that we are seeing. If Mr. Keshav Kumar can take that first question.
Yeah, I couldn't get the question.
Sorry, my question to you was that the focus, of course, is that post the lockdown, as we are now getting into unlock situation, there is already perhaps a surge in crime with a greater relaxed movement of people that perhaps has given opportunity to criminals. Now, as far as crimes against women and children as sexual crimes are concerned, even the NCW is reporting 1,000 cases in just basically even a month. How concerned are you with the increase in crime possibly and crimes against women and children, sexual crimes, the fact that we are now getting into an unlock situation, and of course the economic impact of the global economy and the Indian economy slowing down at this particular stage? How worried are you as a senior policeman?
Yeah, it's a cause for concern, but the silver lining is that we can resort to the forensic interface, which would be giving us good evidences. And during my presentation, I'll be sharing the amount of forensic interface that is going on at the moment. So we have no other option other than getting down to forensics and applying in each and every case as far as possible. That will give us good evidence which will stand the test of the judicial scrutiny.
Okay. Another important question which has been mentioned, and this is again linked to lockdown, and perhaps Dr. Sahajpal perhaps could take this particular question. Dr. Sahajpal, Malaya Shukla asked that post the COVID scenario, it would be very tough time for forensic experts while receiving samples in a lab. Seized samples may be COVID positive. Is that a real concern? And if that's the case, then what can forensic examiners do?
Well, this is a very good question. And when you have a very, very virulent pathogen outside, and about which very less is known till now, it's better to take precautions. And what we have done in our lab is, like as far as case reception and case notebook is concerned, we already provided PPE kits to all the people who are concerned. So one has to maintain the distance and one has to take care of oneself. So and the staff also. So it is essential that all the precautions should be taken care of.
And anything, I mean, is there just standard precautions or is there anything special that they can do or just the basic safety for COVID?
No, we have provided the PPE kits also to the people who are receiving the cases.
All right. I believe Dr. Pinky Anand's also joined us. If I can go to you, ma'am, this particular focus of this discussion is that post-lockdown, are we already seeing a surge in crime? As the countries, amongst the countries' top legal people, how concerned are you with this distinct scenario that there is perhaps an increase in crime, and especially women and children is where this crime is being targeted? How concerned are you with that?
This is an area, Siddharth, always of concern, and I don't think that changes pre-COVID, within COVID, or after COVID. However, I must say that for the time being, there is less reporting for sure. As I think everybody else has also noted broadly, you find that regular crime is not really in focus. You're having the incidence of COVID impacting everybody, so everybody is really preoccupied with either COVID or the protocols to be followed or the norms to be followed. So that doesn't take you very far. But having said that, there are, as I said broadly, there are less incidents now, possibly because of less reporting, but possibly also because of lesser happenings on account of the preoccupation with the major pandemic.
Okay. One question which has come up, and this is something I think we saw recently in a case that had made headlines, and I'd like to get Dr. Vyas on this. The fact that I think this is a question that Sarba Saha has also asked, that what if rape victim's body is burnt? Is there any way to get DNA evidence? Is that possible? So either Dr. Vyas, if he could take this question. Dr. Vyas, sir, if you could hear me, the question basically is that if a rape victim's body is burnt, is there any way that you can still get evidence?
Normally we prefer, and if there is a tooth available, we try to take the material from inside, and we take even bone marrow. If it is intact, DNA will come from bone marrow. So, and then we have seen in some of the cases, even from a cremation point center, some burnt materials were collected, and then few bone pieces we could get DNA profile. It is possible if it is not subjected to total burn, where the DNA is destroyed.
So there is always, perhaps always a chance that there is some DNA that's left.
Forensic scientists should never lose hopes. Whatever is available, he should try. He should try his best.
Is there anything, sir, which is like the perfect crime from a forensic point of view?
Perfect in the sense the person cannot be identified, is this way?
Well, I suppose this is a question from Prithviraj Raghuvanshi, and the question from Prithviraj is that is there anything like a perfect crime from a forensic point of view? Essentially, that can the person who's committing the crime have covered all their forensic tracks, and there's no way that they've left any forensic fingerprint for the examiner?
I don't think. Anything which you do, you are bound to leave traces. Whatever way you do, whatever way you try to remove, destroy evidences, there is nothing which you can do 100%. You are bound to leave something which may not be of your knowledge. So you are bound to leave something, and that traces is more than enough for a forensic scientist to take out, analyze, and identify the person.
And Doctor,
ultimately, one more thing. Suppose he has destroyed everything, and therefore, keeping this in mind, we have gone for forensic psychology, where we interrogate people and then we find out whether what was the role of the person in that particular crime, whether the person is lying or not. You can use lie detector, you use narco analysis, you use vein fingerprinting. All kinds of technologies are available now, where there is no clue. It's all, say, forget about perfection, but maybe the crime is reported to the police after 6 months, and when after 6 months nothing is available, there is nothing for you to examine. There is no evidence. So in such cases, again, they are subjected to psychological methods of interrogation, and there are a large number of crimes where the crime has been solved using psychological methods.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. But as you are saying is that there's always going to be some level of evidence that would be left, and forensic examiners should not give up, whether of course the body's been destroyed or even a scene of a crime. They should keep looking. There are bound to be fingerprints. I'm going to try and ask Vivek Sood if he can now jump in. Vivek, you also very often fight for the rights of those who may not have had a fair day in court. The DNA can also help acquit a person. If a person has been wrongfully found guilty, DNA can also help acquit a person. So how important is that? And do you feel perhaps that sometimes there is a lot of pressure on the legal system that we have to, society wants that who's the guilty party, let's quickly produce them and process them under law, so our law enforcement agencies are under pressure and we sometimes end up catching the wrong person?
Yes, I totally agree with this, that, DNA evidence will not only help catch the criminal or the culprit, it also helps in absolving the innocent. Now, for example, in the Ryan International School matter in Gurgaon, initially that poor bus conductor was caught and he was arrested and he was kept behind bars for a couple of months. So, and later on it was found that some class 11 or class 12 student had committed the crime. So it was a case where there was so much of social pressure, so much of media pressure to catch hold of somebody. So, police in its over enthusiasm or coming under pressure, they just go in for the kill and they catch hold of the first suspect they may get in such highlighted matter. Now that's where DNA evidence comes in. May I just point out the traditional methods of investigation in our country have been typically, you get some statement, 161 statements from some witnesses, you catch hold of a suspect, interrogate him, and you apply all kinds of, first degree, second degree, third degree, extract the confession and work the case backwards. And, the Supreme Court has time and again said in so many judgments that, perjury is rampant in India. Witnesses tend to lie on a platter, they tend to lie on oath, and, they give an embroidered story, or their evidence is full of embellishments and, falsities. So that's where the DNA evidence comes in. DNA evidence is a scientific evidence. It is an authentic piece of evidence. So even if the witnesses may lie or commit perjury, DNA evidence is authentic for catching hold of the culprit, as also for absolving the innocents. So in my view, DNA evidence is a game changer. It has evidentiary, very high evidentiary value. It is a very valuable piece of identification evidence. And as against the oral testimonies, it scores over, oral testimony. Now, may I just give you another example? In a case where the father was accused of raping the minor daughter, now the daughter turned hostile in the court, because of social pressure, etc., etc. She deposed in favor of the father. But since DNA had been found on her private parts, which matched with the DNA of the father, he stood convicted. Now, this incident was narrated by a judge, a judge who happens to be an additional sessions judge in Delhi. So he narrated me this incident. So DNA evidence is a game changer. It has high evidentiary value, and we must promote this species of evidence over the other pieces of evidence.
All right. One.
Hi, Siddharth. I would step in just to kind of, also bring in the case of singer Archie Williams, which in fact should also answer your question, which is, of exonerating the innocent. The case of singer Archie Williams happens to be one where he got freed in 2019 March after 37 years of being in prison. He featured in the America's Got Talent. So I think this is also something for the international audience that I wanted to call out. That this is a great example of an innocent person who was incarcerated of a rape and murder case which came to light.
Well, that's right. And as Arnita is saying, 37 years, I believe that's how long he was incarcerated. And finally, as he said, it's DNA which set him free. So obviously, DNA which had been preserved, it had been kept safely, and it had been collected properly, eventually led to his conviction being overturned. Anita also said that we got international participants. Over 200 participants have logged in from Africa, United Kingdom, Australia, Geneva, Cambodia. So pretty much from across the globe, we've got international participants as well. So this is a very interesting debate, and I think a lot of best practices also is something that we are hoping that we can share and learn from. One other question which I had is the fact that one other question is that if I can ask Dr. Pinky Anand, how important is the fact that when it comes to conviction, very often when the cases are at the at the higher court level, it's if the investigation is not properly carried out, if it's not based on a solid foundation, very often even a conviction can be turned into acquittal. So does that perhaps underscore the need for a DNA database? And that's something also that Monica CS has asked, that why do we not have a DNA database in that case? If Dr. Pinky Anand can take that.
I'll take this from the perspective of Priyadarshini Mattu's case. I think that's the most significant, though it's the reverse, but the principles are the same that you are asking. So in that case, it was an acquittal which was converted to a conviction, and there was evidence which was given by two experts based upon the DNA evidence, and that was disregarded by the trial court, and therefore the acquittal happened. As you know, that was a very important and a landmark case which made the headlines, because a girl, a law student from a university, was in a problem with that case, and she was ultimately killed. So the DNA evidence was considered by the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, in fact, highlighted the importance of that and said there was no reason not to rely upon the DNA evidence. And more importantly than that, the expert witnesses who relied upon the DNA evidence, and that was one of the principal turning features, as you say, the game changer. So DNA evidence itself can, and in most situations. The second part about a DNA data bank. Now, the government has worked on a bill. The bill of 2000 is pending before a committee for consideration. Now, that basically does do the following. So, it sets up a DNA regulatory body, and B, it sets up a DNA data bank. So, I think that is very much on the anvils, and of course, give or take with the crisis such as the current one, we hope that it will soon be in the law books and therefore mandatory, because in each of these cases the data bank is a very essential feature which needs to be preserved and collected and therefore forms as a basis for examination. So that is, Monica, this question that you asked is very much in the offing. It is just a matter of a little time. In the meantime, I just want to point out one more thing, Siddharth. I think where we need to consider in law, I would say this, is that so far, for example, before 2005, before the amendments came in the Criminal Procedure Code, there wasn't any mandate or requirement as such for DNA. Now, DNA started being recognized as a major tool sometime in 2005, and therefore there was brought in certain amendments which included section 53A and 164A of the CRP. See, examination DNA tests as far as the victim is concerned, and DNA evidence as far as the accused is concerned, both of which are critical. Incidentally, DNA is a feature which doesn't figure only in one part of the, let us say, the crime scene, but it figures in others also. And the purpose of both the sections was that there is a procedure laid down for how the DNA is to be collected, how the medical examination is to be done, the procedure that is to be followed in government hospitals and otherwise. It still does not make DNA mandatory. And I think that is one of the features that possibly we do need to look at even more closely, because in any given case where it is possible, and as Keshav rightly said, in almost every case there is some evidence left behind, I think the attempt has to be to collect evidence in all cases, and then that will make the situation much more effective as far as a conviction is concerned, in a relevant case, even acquittal, as Vivek was talking about, because that conclusively proves. And I think we have to shift more and more away, as Supreme Court has commented several times, from ocular evidence to scientific evidence. I think that change is something which is necessitated and has become evident now. DNA profiling has gone up from 10,000 in 2017, it went up to 20,000, which is a double leap forward in 2018. So I guess as we are learning a lot with technology, for example, the current webinar in times of COVID and the meeting of everybody across the virtual screen. Similarly, we have to be able to utilize technology to the best of our advantages, and technology, fortunately, normally doesn't corrupt. Normally.
And very briefly, ma'am, there are concerns about privacy. Well, what about those concerns?
Supreme Court has again addressed this issue of privacy in a couple of cases. So, for example, in ND Tiwari's case, the case where it was a paternity dispute, incidentally, and while we talk about sexual offences or criminal cases, you must understand that DNA evidence is very strong in a number of directions. So, one of the others is a paternity issue, and in the paternity test, the Supreme Court laid down the rules of, following its earlier judgment also, of essential need. Now, essential need is the basis that if there is no other way to do it but this way, therefore the mandate of having a DNA test was directed. In ND Tiwari's case, in addition, the Supreme Court for the time being directed that it be kept in a sealed envelope, and therefore it would not be available for general perusal, and therefore the concerns of privacy were misplaced. But rest assured, it was this direction of paternity test which ultimately was the basis why Mr. N.D. Tiwari finally acknowledged Rohit Tiwari as his son. And I think it was a long battle which went right up to the Supreme Court. Paternity test and DNA itself, examination itself, is not a black mark. And privacy, frankly, is a hazy area. I'll still say this. But if you take the balancing of considerations, what you have is you have a concern of privacy, and B, you have a concern either of, for example, health, as some issues had been raised in respect of some of the applications of the government also. You might have issues of security, you might have issues of crime, you might have issues of serious concern to individuals. So privacy is not an absolute right, as none of the fundamental rights are. Each of them is subject to other fundamental rights. So if there's a conflict between two, you will have to make space to enable that. So therefore, the question of privacy cannot count in an issue which involves or which is involved in a litigation or establishing the rights of others. You know, there's always this public good versus private good, the good of the larger versus the good of the individual. So I think these questions will well be answered that way.
And obviously the database is of those people who have been convicted for an offense, a certain kind of crime. It's not everyone's database, but primarily of those who've been convicted, correct?
You're right, and rest assured you will find issues even based on that as and when the occasion comes. You will find issues of privacy being raised on that, as it has been raised in some other similar issues.
I can see Vivek Sood raising his hand, but okay.
So yes, it would be of the people who are actually indicted, and therefore the question of, you know, it's like talking about somebody who's published about, who's a public figure, and they say once you go into the public domain, your privacy becomes a secondary issue, as compared to an individual who has a right to maintain his or her individuality or privacy, as the case may be. Similarly, in a crime scene, if a crime can be established through DNA evidence or a paternity established, which means the rights of the other individual are affected, then definitely it may not be an invasion of privacy.
Vivek Sood, are you convinced?
I totally agree with Dr. Pinky Anand that privacy is, though it has been recognized as a fundamental right, but it is not absolute. And when it comes to criminal investigation, definitely, you know, privacy will not come in the way of, any criminal investigation. But having a database, definitely the privacy issue will be raised. Ultimately, the matter will be settled at the Supreme Court. But with some experience, I can say that when it comes to criminal investigation, privacy will have to give way to the larger interests of the society. So I agree with Dr. Pinky Anand on all fours on this issue.
Well, okay. If I can just get in Dr. Vyas at this point, and I have a question from Vikram Raj Singh Chauhan. And his question is actually very pertinent one, that whether the IOs, the investigating officers, are trained to collect DNA sample, or they need to be trained as they have to face the cross-examination in a court of law. Now, the university, of course, is training graduates, it's training forensic experts in that field. What happens, because the last person, the main important person who's going to collect the evidence is the constable, is the person at that scene. how important is it that we also get this training across to them? So if Dr. Vyas can come in on this, and perhaps Mr. Keshav Kumar after that.
Yeah, very important question. We need to have trained manpower to deal with this kind of issues. University has taken up this in a big way. We have been training police officers, we have been even training judicial officers, the advocates, the public prosecutors, those who are stakeholders as far as this case is concerned. And this training is being imparted on a regular basis. In addition to this, we are also creating large number of forensic experts who are normally, as per the decision of the government, they can be given in almost all the districts. So each district of the country, you will have one forensic expert at least. So this, wherever there is a crime, this officer goes there and helps investigating officer in collecting all these evidences. He knows how to collect, he also knows how to preserve them and how to forward them to the laboratory. So this is how we are trying to see that more and more forensic component comes in policing, so that you become more accurate, more precise, and you see that you are not losing any evidence. So training of police officers who are in this investigation is one aspect. Providing more and more forensic aid to the police is the other aspect. So we are handling both the things.
Absolutely. And again, if I can just get Mr. Keshav Kumarji also on this, is that we also see very often that crimes are committed across states. Of course, the central agencies would get involved in that case. But in terms of cooperation, there are some states where the capacities are just better. Of course, Gujarat is fortunate to have the Gujarat Forensic Sciences University there. But other states, as a senior police officer, how can you ensure that we share the best practices, and is there a way of doing that, and is that already happening? If Keshav Kumarji can answer that.
Yeah, Siddharth, I would like to. Yeah, Siddharth,
Go ahead, sir.
Two things. Number one, the first part of collection of evidence is at the hospital level. So we focus on forensic work, which unfortunately is not being done. So that is one part which can be looked after by the health department. That is one. The other part is about helping the police in collection of evidence. Now, with regard to Gujarat, we have an excellent system wherein in each and every district there is a forensic mobile, 24 hours on job. So in each and every case, whenever the investigating officer requires the help of the forensic expert, he simply gives a call and the forensic expert reaches at the scene of crime and helps him in not only collecting the evidences but also preserving it well. Dr. Sehpal's presentation gave a very good input that the whole thing depends upon the preservation. Now, as a police officer, I really don't know how to preserve the thing, how to collect that thing. So what is of utmost importance here, that in the presence of the forensic expert, the entire exercise takes place. So I think this is where we are heads and shoulders above other states. But I am fortunate that I am in Gujarat. But that has not deterred Gujarat in helping other states. Like I can tell you honestly, there are n number of police officers across the country who, whenever they require any sort of forensic help, they contact me. And Dr. Vyas has been very kind in extending the support of Gujarat Forensic Science Lab to other states also. And that has not been only case in these important crimes, but also in cases of wildlife crime. Our team was in Uttar Pradesh for 7 days, helping them with the forensic interface. So I think we are outreaching to other states also. But my only one concern here is about the forensic nursing part. In the investigation which I had done of a gang rape case, we unfortunately had to arrest the doctor for fudging with the evidences. So forensic nursing is a very important part. There is some organization in Mumbai that they have collected all the SOPs of the world in terms of forensic nursing, and they have come up with a new model based on the entire world, and they have catered it to Indian conditions. So maybe that part, if it is taken care of, that will be taken very, very nice for the investigating officers.
Well,
I hope to answer your question.
Thank you. In fact, an important point which you raised there is the fact that in most cases, of course, it's watertight. But there was this one particular case which you just shared that example where the doctor had to be arrested because the doctor perhaps had tampered with proof. So I think one question that one of the audience members had asked is that is the FSL evidence then treated as cent% proof? Or again, for defense lawyers, is there scope to say that, look, it perhaps is not 100% proof, even that could be tampered with? Of course, you just gave an example. So I'm just wondering, how does that go in court?
In about 30 years of service that I've put in, most of my investigations have been based on forensics. And till date, I have been able to get conviction of 58 people solely based on forensic evidences. You forget about the ocular evidences, what Dr. Pinky Anand has been saying. So, till date, I have not come across any of the forensic evidences which have been challenged in the court, and that has not come in my favor. So I have been fortunate, not only because I am slightly very passionate about forensics and I know all the protocols. I try to see to it that it is properly implemented, but that might not be the case with so many other police officers. So I have had a very good experience with forensics.
May I just chip in?
Please.
Question. This DNA evidence is not conclusive evidence. It is not absolute. There is nothing called absolute. After all, you can plant a hair or you can plant something on the accused, to implicate him. So there is nothing called absolute evidence, but for very few exceptions under the Indian Evidence Act, which speaks of something called conclusive proof. But DNA evidence is a very strong piece of evidence if collected properly, if collected genuinely, if preserved properly and genuinely, then it goes a long way in either convicting the accused or in absolving the innocent.
So there are so many pieces of evidence too, which fortify our evidences put forth with the forensic evidences.
Okay, thanks. I think that's an important point. One question, and I'm going to try and get both Dr. Vyas and Dr. Pinky Anand on this. This seems to be I think a lot of people are interested in following forensics as a career, and that's why many people are on this webinar as well. But they're saying that as far as jobs are concerned, there perhaps aren't that many jobs, and people from other streams are taken in. I think there's one question from Uma, who says that people from applied sciences are being hired in government forensic laboratories, and we forensic graduates are not even able to get a job. So, again, I think the fact is that, as Dr. Anand said, that in 2015 onwards, the government's giving a big impetus and value to DNA collection. So, obviously, that part, and those who are trained in forensic sciences hopefully will get chance. But Dr. Vyas, what can be done? You are training them, you're training them well, but what about the jobs? And after you, if Dr. Pinky Anand can come, because this seems to be a question that a lot of people in the audience are asking.
Yeah, there is an acute shortage of forensic experts, not only in India, throughout the world. And this is how our Honorable Prime Minister, who was the Chief Minister at that point of time in Gujarat, took a decision of establishing this university. Our job is to provide experts not only to India, the entire world. This is what we are doing. We have students from all over the world. Now, there is a competition. If there is an advertisement and if there is a recruitment in any forensic lab, along with others, you go and compete, and the best person will be selected. Our job is to see that we provide appropriate number of experts to the forensic labs who are in need of this, and we provide experts to the police who also need this kind of expertise. Otherwise, when the university was not there, such expertise was very, very limited in number. Now, after the university came up, we are creating this kind of experts in large number every year. and they go compete. And you see, when we started the university, we had only one concept in the mind, that they will be recruited either in police or they'll be recruited in forensic labs. But after establishing the university, we came to know that there are large number of private firms who are demanding forensic experts, and majority of our students are employed by private firms rather than government agencies. That will be an interesting thing, because even the private firms are interested in hiring them and seeing that petty crimes which take place in their organizations are handled by this kind of experts, and they guide the management in collecting the clues, evidences, doing some preliminary inquiry in their organization. They work as good vigilance officers, they work as good investigators, they work as very good security officers also, because we provide this kind of training and skills to the students. So I don't think there is no shortage. If you have the excellence, you have the capability, job opportunities are immense. There's no
So all law enforcement agencies from across the world who are watching this can contact you for placing some of your graduates and pass outs abroad as well, sir. And I think Keshav Kumarji has a point.
They are doing it. Our students are going abroad also, but then the problem is some of our students are not interested in going to other countries. That also is there, but they are demanding our students, definitely.
Well, that's good to know. Keshav Kumarji, you have a point.
Yeah, Siddharth, I would just want to put up here that, with regard to Siddharth, with number of people who are passing out from the Gujarat Forensic Sciences University, right now I am the director of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. So when I took over the charge, I wanted that, the Anti-Corruption Bureau should have a personal staff of forensics. So I mooted a proposal to the government that I would like to have forensic interns with Anti-Corruption Bureau who could possibly help us in 45-hour evidence collection. And the government I'm very grateful to the government that they accepted my proposal. And as on date, I have 30 forensic interns who are interning with me and helping with me in investigations. Now, after this, getting enthused about the interns, I again mooted a proposal that why not we have a qualified forensic advisor for Anti-Corruption Bureau. So Gujarat would be the first state wherein the Anti-Corruption Bureau has a forensic advisor. And again, who is the forensic advisor? She is a student from the Gujarat Forensic Sciences University. So, the opportunities are expanding. And I think in times to come, there will be a great opportunity for all the forensic.
I think it's brilliant. It's such an innovative way that a forensic person in corruption, anti-corruption also.
This is catching up. So then Odisha police officers, they got in touch with me. Please let us know what is this system. So they are also trying to implement that. UP police is also going to start this. Now this is not only limited to forensic interns. We have national law universities all over. So again, I mooted a proposal for strengthening the prosecution. Why not have the law interns with the Anti-Corruption Bureau? So the government was very happy and they have permitted me to have law interns. Now I have 10 law interns with me who help me with prosecution.
So I think that's brilliant, and I think other states could definitely follow suit. And Dr. Anand, if I can get you in on this, anything that can be done from the central government side to try and encourage this, and people are concerned that they're learning this science, but there aren't enough jobs.
Siddharth, what I think is that people should not be concerned to this extent, that the government is actually, by certain guidelines also, mandated the funding of projects for purposes of forensic testing, etc. So I think the day has come when forensics have come into being on their own, along with the government's efforts and people like Keshav as a kind assistants as law interns and other interns of other natures. But it is a very, very growing field, and it is a field which is not going away. It's going to remain because it's very credible. On that one credible part, I just wanted to add, actually DNA evidence is considered as if you produce a DNA evidence that's conclusive, but DNA evidence only connects. So that connection, A, subject to credibility, subject to procedure. But the rest of the connection, and to show that it is being collected from the scene of the crime at the relevant place, or to connect the accused with the crime, or to have the acquittal of the accused, is something which still has to be established. So DNA takes you a long way towards that, and the more I think crime investigation is going to follow the DNA procedures and profiling, which must in fact become mandatory in due course, I think the more the requirement for the forensic experts, and people should not lose heart. It's like, lawyers. You have a lot of lawyers and you have a lot of law schools. So every lawyer obviously cannot get where they might want to do. But with the increasing requirement, I mean, it's all to do with supply and demand. The more the demand, the more the supply, and then it goes on in that fashion. But it finds its own balance. So everybody take heart. You will get good jobs.
I think that's really heartening to hear. Well, it's been such a fantastic discussion we've got. We've got so many questions. We'll try and take some more a little later on, but I'm going to try and move on at this stage. Please stay with us because there's lots more exciting things coming up, including a poll that we have to test everyone's knowledge on where they stand as far as forensics is concerned. Well, I'd like to remind our audiences that very quickly that you can get in touch with us. You can send in your comments, your suggestions, and our hashtag is DNA Fights Rape. And you can tweet questions, or you can just retweet this webinar as well, and also through Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube as well. Well, a lot of you already know quite a bit as far as DNA and forensic science is concerned. Now's your chance to put that to the test. The first 5 people to get the right answers to 5 questions will win a special prize, and that's that prize on the screen right now. It's a book on forensics, the anatomy of crime by Val McDermid, and Dr. Vyas will be signing all those copies, those 5 copies for the 5 lucky winners who get the right answer. Now, how do you register? Well, you have to register to take this poll. Just follow the YouTube link description to register. And remember that you need to provide your name and your phone number so that we can contact the winners. And when you do register, do remember the GFSUWEB web is the room ID, and that's also there in the YouTube link description. So just follow that and just start registering. And while you register, while you complete the registration process, I'm going to request Keshav Kumarji, if he could just quickly, summarize for us some of the important key takeaways from the discussion we've had today, and share some of your thoughts. Keshav Kumarji.
The first thing that is the greatest takeaway from here is from Dr. Vyas, who has raised the issue with regard to the inclusion and exclusion of an accused. So, and DNA could be a best source for this. And the other thing that we must acknowledge is the new DNA bill, which is just on the anvil. We have to just wait for it and see what is in store for us. Anita spoke about the DNA database. Yes, we need to have a DNA database with whatever qualification that the government proposes to do. Then about the awareness and the sensitization. Yes, of course. I would say there should be not only awareness about DNA among the general people, but also more in the investigating officers. Because, we are the cutting edge. So they have to be trained well. Then Mr. Sejpal, he spoke about lots on detection on the basis of DNA. And the issue, what is the biggest takeaway from Dr. Sejpal's discussion is with regard to the preservation of the exhibits. I have been appalled by this because in many of the cases, just because of faulty preservation, we have lost the case. So not only the protocols have to be understood properly by the forensic expert, but also by the investigating officers and the supervisory officers. I had a small presentation on this, if that is permitted, and that if you have time, then so many things that have been discussed can get,
Sir, a very brief presentation for sure, for a couple of minutes, yes. A very short presentation.
Yeah, very short one, yeah. Please. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah. I call DNA the detective DNA because it detects. Next. Next, please. Yeah. Now, if we see the amount of cases that have been disposed, so about 1,039 cases have been registered, out of which only 47,008 have been convicted. The sources are from NCRB. So you can see the gap in between the cases of which are registered and the cases which are convicted. Now we have to bridge this with what Dr. Sehpal and Dr. Vyas has been saying. We have to bridge this with forensics. Only then this gap will be reduced. Next. Now, if you see, in all the cases with murder with rape, the rate of charge sheet is 86%. And in rape cases, it is 85%. So we charge sheet all the cases, most of the cases in both the types of crimes. Next. Now let's say what is the conviction rate. Next. So the rate of conviction rate in murder with rape is 61%, whereas simple rape cases it's only 27%. Now this can trigger so many questions, and I could have gone on and on for the gap in here. So this is the thing where we have to bridge by forensics and by proper prosecution. Next. Now overall there was a study made by the National Law University Kolkata in about 2000 in which they had come up with this figure. 5% in total cognizable cases, 53% in murder and rape cases. The present state of forensic interface. So just see the gap, and for those aspiring forensic experts, they can get some solace from this figure that they have a very good scope, and sooner or later they shall be landing with a good job. Next please. Now the biggest case that I investigated was Bijal Joshi gang rape case of Ahmedabad in 2003. Next. Even when the 5 accused sentenced with life imprisonment, this was possibly the only case based on DNA in the year 2003. Next. Why? Now the highlights of the examination that all the witnesses turned hostile except Vaishali, the sister of the accused, deceased, and the brother. Next. Despite that, we got conviction. Next. We had about 200 pieces of evidence provided to the court, most of them based on DNA. 600 pages of judgment, battery of lawyers for the accused, and trial took 5 years. Next. Five accused sentenced with life imprisonment, solely based on DNA evidences. Next. Why? Because prompt, detailed FIR, personal, incisive supervision of superior officers, then grit of Vaishali, the sister, and her family, the suicide note, the DNA fingerprinting, and the medical evidences. Next. Hard evidences, nailed accused, samples of human remains collected. I think Dr. Sehpal would be very happy seeing all these things. And it was all under the supervision of Dr. Vyas. Next. Now we tightened the prosecution also. Next. Strong protest of bail, affidavit of IFO, appointment of special public prosecutor, requesting the service of Gujarat government's legal counsel, then joint meetings of FSL police and legal counsel. So the prosecution part we took care, which normally is forwarded in most of the cases. Next. The bail was rejected by all the courts. Next. There was a special mention of DNA report in the judgment of the case. Next. Now where is DNA? This is the question asked by most of the people, and this is what the present webinar is about. Next. Now what I have come, I have listed all the exhibits, the possible location of DNA, and
DNA can be extracted from what? I think this can be a very good standard thing which each and every IU can keep with them, so that they don't miss out on evidences. Next. Now, for collection of evidence, this is my prescription, that you have to keep your eyes and ears open for collection of evidences. Next. Now, with new technologies, what are available? There are two very good technology available. Next. Number one is the forensic molecular photo fitting, from wherein, from a speck of blood at the scene of crime, you can create the 2D figure of the person. Next. The other is the DNA 3D photo fitting, wherein from the speck of any evidence, you can create the model of the face of the accused. Now, these are some of the advances which we have yet to see. Next. Now, we have used anti-corruption, DNA in anti-corruption cases also. In a case, a person swallowed the currency note, we extracted the currency note and then gone in for DNA fingerprinting. Dr. Vyas gave a very good input here that yes, we can do that, and we got a positive result in 2 cases. So, we are expanding the horizons of DNA in anti-corruption cases too. Next. This is the article which was carried out by Times of India. Next. And the other case, ACB recovers money swallowed by vet. Next. Thank you so much. These are the things that we are carrying in from this webinar. And grateful to Mr. Sood, who talked about scientific evidences, and equally fortified by Dr. Pinky Anand for these scientific evidences to be collected. So this is all that I have to say.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Keshav Kumar. And I think what you also showed is that, yes, and what Dr. Pinkianan said, that don't lose heart. They are jobs. In fact, this is a growing field. Its importance, I think, everyone is realizing. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Keshav Kumarji. Well, now I think the moment that a lot of people have been waiting for, I'm just seeing the response online, and I think everyone's very eager to answer that poll, and we're going to start that poll very shortly in just the next couple of seconds. So, in fact, do remember you have to answer 5 questions in the record time of 10 seconds each. The first question: in a sexual offense and rape case, one of the below may be considered as most conclusive evidence to convict the offender. Which of them is it? So that's the first question. Statement of eyewitness in court, survivor's statement to the police, forensic DNA evidence at the scene of the crime matching with suspect's profile, or the past criminal record of the offender. That's the first of 5 questions. Remember, the fastest finger first wins. The second question: what is the estimated annual volume of DNA tests done for crime cases in India? Less than 30,000, more than 60,000 but less than 80,000, more than 1 lakh but less than 2 lakhs, or more than 3 lakh cases? That's the second question. Third question: as per the National Crime Record Bureau data from 2018, what are the chances that the offender is known to the rape survivor? Less than 20%, almost 50% chance, exactly 80%, or at least 94% of the cases? That's question 3. Question 4. How many countries till date have adopted the DNA National Offenders Database? Only the UK and the US. 30 countries across the globe is choice B. Nearly 60 by now, including Bangladesh, or widely adopted by over 80 countries. Question 5 and final question. A national DNA database can help track in A, every citizen's profile, a citizen's wealth status, a person's health condition, or repeat offense. So those are those 5 questions that we have. Who got them right? That's the big question. Well, as we tabulate the answers of that, I think many of you have punched in those answers. So we'll quickly let you know who those lucky 5 winners are. Fastest finger first, and remember to get all the 5 answers correct. And that's the book, the book that you will get. And Dr. Vyas has agreed to autograph 5 of those books. Well, it's we'll let you know about that result very shortly as we tabulate the results. One very important initiative which we'd like to share with you at this time is the fact that last year something that we've all been working on became a reality, and that was a special manual of standard operating procedures for the first responders by Delhi Police along with Ogilvy. The manual, which is in an illustrative form, was evolved from the guidelines issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs. This is the first of its kind. And as we go forward, we're also looking to partner with other law enforcement agencies. And what's really important is that very often, this is what we've discussed, first offenders may not know how to process the collection of DNA and the evidence. So this is an illustrative work, and it's for the people who are the first responders on how to collect sample and the evidence and keep it safely. So that was an initiative last year, and as I said, this was with Delhi Police and other law enforcement agencies. We'd be more than happy to partner with them for that as well. Well, I think we just have a couple of moments to go, and then the moment of truth as to who exactly won the contest. So I'm just waiting for our tech team to give us the results. And I think we actually had so many people responding to this that I think many of them are going to be very, very close as far as the results are concerned. So that we will just get to in a very short while. Well, while we go to those results, let me also just tell you that while of course those 5 people get the specially autographed book, everyone here who's taken part in this discussion, in this webinar, and on all the audience, they get certificates which will be emailed to you. So it's very important that you share your email IDs with us, and that's right. So all of you who have taken part, and there are a lot of people I can see online who've been asking this question, that will we get a certificate? We'd like to have that certificate of participation. So yes, those certificates of participation will indeed be emailed to you. So just share your email ID. The results, our tech team is just quickly figuring out the results of that pop quiz. How many of you got it right? Apparently many people have hit the buzzer at the same time, so we're just going to tell you who those 5 lucky winners are. It's been a very enlightening debate and discussion. I think the fact also is that one thing that we all have realized is that very often that we are fighting a crime, there's a lot of experience that can be shared, and this has been the platform, I think, where all of us have come together. Dr. Vyas has talked about the fact that he's always open to any problems that students may face. Keshav Kumarji has also talked about the fact that do not worry about the jobs. That's what Pikyan also is saying, that the jobs are coming. Vivek Sood has also said that, look, even if you're working as far as the defense is concerned, you don't have to be a prosecutor or on that side of the law, but the DNA, of course, is going to be important. So, well, folks, the moment of truth, I think we are almost there, and I think we've got the names of our 5 winners. So, let's see. Well, there you have it. Harika Koti is the first person who's hit all the buzzers correct, fastest finger first. El Shivi is the second winner. Pankaj Kumar, Saida Uma Ali, and Dr. Mahira Ratnash. So 5 winners, 5 lucky winners who got all the answers right, and they hit the buzzer first, so fastest finger first, and they had all the right answers. But I can tell you what our tech team is telling us, that many others. So first, and in fact, the first person, Harika Koti, got all the answers correct, and and the others have got most of the answers correct. And many of you who haven't got this book is only because you weren't the first 5. But do remember, you are all going to get those certificates. So do make sure that you share your email ID. Well, folks, it's been, I think, an amazing debate, as we all, I think, all will agree. It's also amazing to see that we've had almost 2.5 hours, and it doesn't feel that long. But I think we could continue this discussion for a long time, but we have to at some point say goodbye. But sometimes we need to lock down even good things. Arnita, time to say goodbye, but I think you can also tell us how we can all stay connected as well and continue to share our experiences. Over to you, Arnita.
Thank you so much, Siddharth. That was a very powerful discussion, and thanks for steering all through. My sincere thanks to Dr. Vyas for his thought leadership, and to the entire team of GFSU for guiding this all along. Of course, our eminent set of panelists, Dr. Pinky Anand, Mr. Keshav Kumar, Senior Advocate Vivek Sood, and Dr. Sahaj Pal, of course. It's been such a great session, such an enlightening session, and I would really love to get that feedback from the audience, for which I think it'll be great if you can get in touch with us. You can get in touch with the team Ogilvy in India while you post us your comments and responses on what you thought about the session. I think it'll be great to share, some of the contacts that you see here on the screen. You can get in touch with Ashish Trivedi and Saurabh Maurya. You can write to us via email and also call us if required. Additionally, as a take out of the session, I think it will be very important if you were to just look at one clear aspect here, which I hear coming from all the thought leaders who have participated, is the fact that there is a need to have our first line critical responders completely sensitized with the protocols that are required for the DNA collect and test, what we refer to as DNA casework, which is utmost important and most critical to the success of the case in investigation. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll conclude this session. And before we leave, I would also like to leave you and inform you with the fact that we have prepared DNA Fights Rape webinar kit, which is available to you in the description of the YouTube live session, which you may be able to download and take away from there some of the compilations that we have brought for you. I hope you found the session useful. Please stay in touch. That's a big thank you from Ogilvy India. Thank you.